The champagne glass shattered against the marble floor of the penthouse suite, spraying golden liquid across Adana's swollen feet. She stood frozen in the doorway of the bathroom, her postpartum body still tender from delivering their son just 3 weeks ago, milk stains visible on her nightgown. But it wasn't the broken glass that made her heart stop. It was the sight of her husband Chaik's naked body pressed against her younger sister Ngozi on their matrimonial bed, the same bed where she'd nursed their newborn son that very morning. Chaik. The name came out as a whisper, then a scream. Chaik. Her husband's head snapped around, his eyes widening with something that looked less like guilt and more like annoyance. Ngozi didn't even bother covering herself, a smirk playing on her lips as she reached for the silk sheet. Ada, you're supposed to be sleeping, Chaik said, standing up without shame, his tone suggesting she was the one who'd walked into the wrong room. The baby finally went down, and I thought. You thought you'd sleep with my sister? Adana's voice cracked, her hands trembling. This couldn't be real. This was Lagos, Nigeria, 2025. They lived in Banana Island's most expensive tower. Chaik was a successful real estate mogul. They were supposed to be the perfect couple, the ones everyone envied at their wedding just 2 years ago at Oriental Hotel. What would you do if you walked in on this? Hit like if you've been betrayed, and comment below where you're watching from. This is a story about domestic betrayal, infidelity, and revenge that will leave you speechless. Ngozi stood up now, wrapping the sheet around her body like a queen claiming her throne. Ada, maybe if you hadn't let yourself go after the pregnancy, Chaik wouldn't need to look elsewhere. You knew I was staying here to help with the baby. The words hit harder than any physical blow. Adana looked down at her body, still carrying baby weight, stretch marks visible through her thin nightgown, breasts engorged and leaking. She'd given Chaik a son. Their families had celebrated for days. Her mother-in-law had called her blessed. And now, just 21 days later, she was watching her husband betray her with her own blood. Get out, Adana whispered, backing toward the door. Both of you, get out. Chaik pulled on his silk robe, the expensive one she'd bought him for Christmas. This is my house, Ada. My name is on the deed. You don't tell me what to do in my own home. The baby's cry echoed from the nursery down the hall. Adana's breasts responded immediately, milk beginning to leak through her gown. Maternal instinct warred with rage and humiliation. She needed to feed her son, but how could she function when her entire world was crumbling? I'll deal with you later, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. She turned toward the nursery, but Chaik's next words stopped her cold. You're lucky I kept you this long. Do you know how many women would kill to be Mrs. Okonkwo? But I married you because my mother insisted. You were modest, traditional, good breeding stock. He laughed, the sound cruel and unfamiliar. But now that you've given me my heir, maybe it's time I started enjoying my life again. Adana's hand gripped the doorframe. The baby's cries grew louder, more desperate. Behind her, she could hear Ngozi giggling, the sound like broken glass against her ears. This was the same sister she'd paid school fees for, the one she'd welcomed into her home despite Chaik's initial reluctance. As she walked to the nursery, picking up her crying son and pressing him to her breast, Adana's tears fell silently onto his fuzzy head. Little Chinedu suckled hungrily, unaware that his world had just shattered. In the master bedroom, she could hear low voices, then laughter. They weren't even ashamed. But as Adana sat in the darkness of the nursery, something shifted inside her. The crying stopped. The shaking stopped. In its place, a cold, clear fury began to crystallize. Her phone buzzed on the changing table, a message from her best friend Oluchi. Ada, I need to tell you something about Chaik. Call me when you can. Adana's jaw tightened. How long had this been going on? How many people knew before her? She thought about her father's warnings before the wedding, her mother's quiet concerns about Chaik's reputation. She dismissed them all, believing in love and the sanctity of marriage. That Adana had died 20 minutes ago. The woman who remained was someone new, someone dangerous. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more gripping stories like this. What do you think happens next? Comment below. Morning light filtered through the nursery curtains as Adana fed Chinedu his 6 a.m. bottle. She hadn't slept. Her eyes were dry now, all tears exhausted. In the master bedroom, she could hear movement, Chaik getting ready for work as if nothing had happened. There was no sign of Ngozi. The cheating spouse had probably slipped out in the early hours, confident that her older sister was too weak, too traditional, too bound by family values to make a scene. They didn't know her at all. Adana's phone had been busy all night. Oluchi's message had been the first of several revelations. Her best friend had sent screenshots, Chaik at clubs with different women, credit card statements showing hotel charges on nights he claimed to be at site inspections, WhatsApp messages between him and at least 4 other women. The infidelity in marriage wasn't a one-time mistake. It was a pattern, a lifestyle. "Mama loves you," Adana whispered to Chinedu, kissing his forehead. "And Mama is going to make sure you grow up knowing that a woman should never be treated the way your father treated me." Chaik appeared in the nursery doorway, dressed in his tailored navy suit, already checking his phone. He didn't look at her. "I'm heading to the office. There's money on the kitchen counter for groceries. My mother is coming by this afternoon to see her grandson. We need to talk." Adana's voice was calm, measured. "Not now, Ada. I have a meeting with the investors from Dubai at 9. He adjusted his gold Rolex, the one she'd helped him buy when his first major deal closed. "Besides, you're being dramatic. What you saw last night was my husband committing adultery with my sister in our bed while our 3-week-old son slept down the hall." She stood up, placing Chinedu in his crib. The baby was milk-drunk and drowsy, his tiny fists curled against his cheeks. "Yes, Chaik, we do need to talk. Now." Something in her tone made him look up from his phone. Really look at her. What he saw made him uncomfortable. This wasn't the soft, accommodating woman he'd married. This wasn't the Ada who deferred to his every decision, who'd left her banking job when he insisted she should focus on starting a family. "Fine. You have 5 minutes." Adana walked past him into the living room, her postpartum body still aching but her mind razor-sharp. The penthouse was immaculate, she'd always kept it that way, playing the perfect wife role. Crystal vases from their wedding sat on marble shelves. Photos of their court wedding and traditional ceremony lined the walls. In every picture, she was smiling, glowing, believing she'd found her forever. "I want you to tell me the truth," she said, standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Victoria Island. "How long have you been cheating? And don't lie. I already know about Blessing, Temi, Kemi, and Folake." The color drained from Chaik's face. "Who told you?" He caught himself. "Ada, those are just friends. You're being paranoid. This is what happens when women stay home alone with babies. They start imagining. I have screenshots, bank statements, hotel receipts. Oluchi hired a private investigator last month because she was worried about me." Adana turned to face him, her voice steady despite the emotional manipulation she could feel him attempting. "You've been cheating since before I got pregnant. Maybe even before our wedding." Chaik's jaw tightened. "So what? You want to lecture me? I'm a man, Ada. A successful man. This is Lagos, not some village where men have one wife and pray rosary every night. My father had 3 wives. My grandfather had 5. At least I only have 1 legal wife." "Had," Adana corrected softly. "What?" "Had 1 legal wife. Past tense." She walked to the dining table where she'd laid out papers during the night. "I called my uncle, Uncle Emeka, the lawyer. We had a very interesting conversation about marital property, especially property acquired during marriage. Turns out, even though your name is on the deed, I have rights. Especially as the mother of your legitimate heir." Chaik laughed, but it sounded nervous. "You're going to divorce me? Over what? One mistake with your sister. Do you know what that will do to your reputation? To your family name? Your mother will be ashamed. Your father will disown you for leaving a marriage over such a small thing. You'll be the topic of every Lagos WhatsApp group." "Maybe," Adana agreed. "Or maybe I'll be the woman who refused to let a man turn her into a joke. The woman who taught her son that domestic betrayal has consequences." She picked up her phone, scrolling to a video file. Do you want to know what else I did last night while you were sleeping? I went through your laptop. The password was our son's birth date. How sentimental. I found something interesting. Emails to Ngozi going back 8 months. Which means you were sleeping with my sister while I was pregnant, while I was having morning sickness so bad I couldn't leave the bathroom, while I was at the hospital getting checked for preeclampsia. Chike moved toward her, his hand outstretched. Give me that phone, Ada. Or what? She held it up, stepping back. You'll hit me? Go ahead. Your mother is coming in a few hours. I'll make sure she sees the evidence of what kind of man her son really is. The threat worked. Chike stopped, his face contorted with rage. You don't understand what you're doing. I have connections, Ada. Lawyers, judges, police commissioners. If you try to destroy me, I will make sure you never see Chinedu again. I'll prove you're an unfit mother, mentally unstable, suffering from postpartum psychosis. They'll take him away, and I'll give him to someone more suitable. Maybe Ngozi would make a better mother anyway. The words were designed to break her. In the old Adana's world, they would have worked. She would have collapsed, begged forgiveness, accepted humiliation in exchange for keeping her child close. But that Adana was gone. Try it, she said quietly. But while you're making your plans, remember, I grew up in this city too. My father may not have your money, but our family name means something. And I'm not the only woman you've hurt, Chike. I wonder how your investors from Dubai would feel knowing their potential partner has multiple sexual harassment complaints buried by his lawyer. How do I know? She smiled coldly. Temi works at your office. She's been documenting everything. Chike's phone rang, his secretary calling about the morning meeting. He grabbed it with shaking hands, his eyes never leaving Adana's face. As he answered, his tone shifted to smooth professionalism, the same charm that had won her over 2 years ago. When he hung up, his expression had changed. The anger was gone, replaced by calculated coldness. You want war, Ada? You'll get it. But remember, you're the one who chose to break up this family. That baby needs his father. Are you really going to let your pride destroy Chinedu's future? After he left, slamming the door hard enough to make Chinedu cry, Adana collapsed on the couch. Her hands were shaking now, adrenaline fading. But she couldn't stop. Not yet. She picked up her phone and made 3 calls. First, to Uncle Emeka, I need you to file divorce papers today. I'm not waiting. Second, to her bank, I need to freeze joint accounts and establish my own. Third, to her mother, Mama, there's something I need to tell you. And I need you to trust me, no matter what people say. By the time Chike's mother arrived that afternoon, Adana had showered, dressed in traditional Ankara despite her postpartum body, and prepared herself for the performance of her life. Mrs. Okonkwo swept in with her driver carrying gifts, expensive baby clothes, gold jewelry for Adana, fresh pepper soup in a cooler. My beautiful Ada, where is my grandson? Mrs. Okonkwo's smile was warm, genuine. She'd been kind throughout the pregnancy, supportive during the difficult labor. Adana's heart ached knowing what was coming. He's sleeping, Ma. Please, sit. We need to talk. Mrs. Okonkwo's smile faltered. What's wrong? You look tired. Is Chike not helping with night feedings? These men, they think babies feed themselves. Chike is sleeping with Ngozi. The words hung in the air like smoke after gunfire. Mrs. Okonkwo's face went through several emotions: shock, disbelief, anger, and finally something that looked like resignation. Your sister Ngozi? The one staying here. The same. I caught them last night in our bed. What Adana didn't expect was Mrs. Okonkwo's next words. And you're surprised. Child, did you think marriage was about love? It's about family, legacy, children. My son gave you a beautiful boy. Why are you stirring trouble over? Over adultery? Over betrayal? Adana stood up, her voice rising. Over the fact that your son has been cheating on me since before our wedding? That he called me breeding stock last night? That he threatened to take my baby because I dared to be hurt by his infidelity. Mrs. Okonkwo's expression hardened. Lower your voice in my presence. I am still your mother-in-law. Yes, my son made mistakes. Men do. But a good wife knows when to turn the other cheek, when to focus on her family rather than her feelings. This is not America, Ada. This is Africa. We endure. We build. We don't throw away marriages because our pride is wounded. The emotional manipulation was subtle but powerful. Adana felt the weight of cultural expectations, family values, the voices of aunties and grandmothers echoing through generations. Endure, submit, sacrifice. Good women don't leave their marriages. Good mothers put their children first, even if it means swallowing poison daily. But then Chinedu cried from the nursery, and Adana thought about what lessons she wanted to teach him. Did she want him growing up thinking this was acceptable? That women existed to serve and endure while men did whatever they pleased? I respect you, Ma, Adana said quietly. But I will not teach my son that it's acceptable to treat women this way. I'm filing for divorce. Mrs. Okonkwo stood up, gathering her bags. Her face was stone. Then you are no longer part of this family. And don't think you're taking my grandson. We will fight you in every court in this country. After she left, Adana received a text from Ngozi. You shouldn't have said anything. Now everyone will know you couldn't keep your husband satisfied. This is your fault, Ada. You've always been jealous of me. Adana stared at the message, at the gaslighting attempt, the shifting of blame. Then she did something that surprised even herself. She laughed. A cold, bitter sound that scared her with its unfamiliarity. She screenshot the message and sent it to Uncle Emeka with a note. Add this to the file. Evidence of affair and emotional manipulation. Her phone rang again. This time it was Oluchi. Ada, I just heard from my cousin who works at Zenith Bank. Chike tried to empty your joint savings account this morning. Uncle Emeka's quick action saved it. But Ada, there's more. I need to come over. What I have to tell you, you need to be sitting down for. Don't forget to like and share this story. What do you think Oluchi discovered? Drop your predictions in the comments. Oluchi arrived 30 minutes later, her face grave. She was carrying a large envelope and refused to speak until they were in the nursery with the door closed. Somewhere Adana could watch Chinedu sleep while hearing whatever bomb her best friend was about to drop. I need you to promise me you won't do anything rash, Oluchi began, sitting on the nursing chair. Not until we have a plan. Just tell me. Adana's voice was flat. After the last 24 hours, she wasn't sure anything could shock her anymore. Oluchi opened the envelope, pulling out photos. They showed Chike at various locations around Lagos. Terra Culture, the Civic Center, Eco Hotel, Get Arena. In every photo, he was with women. Different women. But it was the last set of photos that made Adana's blood run cold. Chike and Ngozi, not from last night, but from months ago. Dated photos showing them at various hotels, restaurants, even at the beach in Lekki. The timestamps ranged from 6 months before Adana's wedding to as recent as 2 weeks ago, right after Chinedu was born. This wasn't a mistake, Adana whispered. This wasn't even an affair. This was planned. Calculated. There's more. Oluchi's voice cracked. Ada, Ngozi is pregnant. 3 months. She's been posting about it on her private Instagram, the one you don't follow. She's calling Chike her baby daddy, and herself a second wife in waiting. Your sister is planning to replace you. The room tilted. Adana gripped the crib railing, her knuckles white. Ngozi was pregnant. With Chike's child. While Adana was still recovering from giving birth to his first son. The betrayal was so complete, so thorough, that for a moment she couldn't breathe. How long have you known? The question came out harsh. I only found out 2 days ago. I've been trying to figure out how to tell you, and then last night happened and I thought, God, Ada, I'm so sorry. I should have told you sooner. I should have. No. Adana cut her off. No, you did the right thing. If you'd told me while I was pregnant, the stress might have hurt Chinedu. Now. She looked down at her sleeping son, at his perfect features, his tiny chest rising and falling. Now I know what I'm fighting for. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Hello, Mrs. Okonkwo. My name is Mercy Adelik. I work at Chike's office. I have information you need to see. Can we meet? Adana showed the message to Oluchi. This is the fourth woman who's reached out since I started making calls this morning. How many women has he hurt? From what my investigator found. At least 8 that we can confirm. Mercy is one of them. She filed a complaint with HR about inappropriate conduct, but it was buried. Chike's firm is good at making problems disappear. Not this time. Adana typed a response. Tomorrow. 2 p.m. Jazz Hole in Lekki. Come alone. The next message was from her mother. Ada, your mother-in-law called me. She says you're leaving Chike over a small matter. Please, my daughter, think about your son. Think about our family name. Women have endured worse. This is part of marriage. You must go back and apologize. Apologize. For being betrayed. For refusing to accept infidelity, domestic betrayal, and public disgrace. For having self-respect. Adana called her mother. Mama, did you know about Chike and Gozi? Silence. Then softly, I suspected. But Ada, what could I say? You were married already. The bride price was paid. Walking away from a marriage brings shame. More shame than raising your daughter's baby while sleeping with her husband? Adana's voice broke. Mama, how can you ask me to accept this? Because that's what women do. Her mother's voice rose. You think your father never strayed? You think my marriage was perfect? I endured. Ada. I built a home, raised you children, kept my family together. That is a woman's strength, not running away when things get hard. No, Mama. That's not strength. That's survival. And I want more for Chinedu than to teach him his mother survived. I want him to know she fought. She hung up before her mother could respond. The phone immediately rang again, this time Chike's number. She declined the call. It rang 7 more times before a text came through, You're making a mistake. I'm giving you 24 hours to drop this divorce nonsense and apologize to my mother, or you'll regret it. I've already spoken to my lawyers. You'll have nothing. Nothing. Oluchi read the message over her shoulder. He's scared. Men like Chike, they bully because they're afraid. Once someone stands up to them, they don't know what to do. Good. Let him be scared. Adana forwarded the threatening message to Uncle Emeka with a note, adding to the file. Intimidation and coercion. That night, after Oluchi left, Adana sat in the nursery feeding Chinedu. The apartment was too quiet. She'd sent the house help home, couldn't trust anyone right now. As she nursed her son, she thought about the generations of women in her family who'd stayed silent, who'd endured, who'd sacrificed themselves on the altar of family values and cultural expectations. She thought about her grandmother, who'd died bitter and angry despite a 50-year marriage. About her own mother, whose eyes held sadness that never quite disappeared. About the aunties who'd lectured her about submission while their own husbands openly kept second families. Not you, she whispered to Chinedu. You're going to grow up knowing that love isn't supposed to hurt. That marriage should be partnership, not ownership. That women aren't property or breeding stock or servants. Her phone buzzed. A text from Gozi. Did you think he really loved you? You were just the respectable wife, Ada. The one his mother approved of. But I'm the one he wants. I'm young, beautiful, exciting. And my baby will be just as legitimate as yours. Chike already promised to marry me traditionally once you're gone. You should leave with dignity while you still can. The cruelty was breathtaking. Adana's hands shook as she finished burping Chinedu and placed him in his crib. She walked to the master bedroom, looking at the bed where she'd found them. The sheets had been changed, probably by Chike himself, trying to erase evidence, but she could still see it in her mind. She opened her laptop and began to write. An email. To Chike's business partners, his investors, his mother's friends, every contact in his phone that she'd memorized over 2 years of marriage. She didn't send it. Not yet. But she saved it in drafts, a nuclear option waiting for the right moment. The email detailed everything. The affairs, the threats, Ngozi's pregnancy, the harassment complaints from other women. She attached screenshots, bank statements, hotel receipts, the photos Oluchi had brought. If Chike wanted war, she'd give him war. But she'd do it smart, strategic, the way her banking training had taught her. Around 2 a.m., she heard the front door open. Chike stumbled in, drunk. She could hear him in the kitchen, knocking things over. Then his footsteps in the hallway, stopping at the nursery door. Ada. His voice was slurred. Ada, open the door. She'd locked herself and Chinedu inside. Go away, Chike. This is my house. My son. You can't lock me out of my own nursery. He pounded on the door, making Chinedu startle awake. Open this door right now. Adana picked up her phone, opening the video camera. I'm recording everything, Chike. Every word. Every threat. Keep going. My lawyer will love this. The pounding stopped. Heavy breathing on the other side of the door. Then, you've changed, Ada. You used to be sweet. Submissive. Now you're cold. Hard. Like a beast. Yeah, that's what you are. A beast. No wonder I couldn't stand touching you after the baby. The word stung, but Adana kept recording. Go sleep it off, Chike. We'll talk when you're sober. There's nothing to talk about. My mother is right. You're overreacting. So what if I sleep with other women? So what if it's your sister? At least she doesn't look like she just got run over by a Danfo bus. At least she still knows how to make a man happy. Adana's finger hovered over the stop button, but she forced herself to keep recording. This was evidence. This was the real Chike, stripped of charm and pretense. This was what she'd been living with, what she'd almost condemned herself and her son to endure forever. When he finally left, stumbling to the master bedroom, Adana allowed herself to cry. Not for the marriage. That was dead. Not for Chike. He'd never deserved her tears. She cried for the version of herself she'd lost, for the naive girl who believed in fairy tales and forever, for the innocence that had been shattered by domestic betrayal and infidelity. But when the tears stopped, something else remained. Determination. Purpose. A mother's fierce love for her son and the future she wanted to build for him. She uploaded the recording to 3 different cloud accounts, sent copies to Oluchi and Uncle Emeka, and added a note to her draft email, P.S. voice recording attached of Chike drunk, threatening, and verbally abusive. Timestamp: October 2nd, 2025, 2:47 a.m. Then she did something that would change everything. She posted a carefully worded status on her Instagram. Sometimes the hardest part of motherhood is realizing you have to be strong enough for 2. Teaching my son about respect starts with respecting myself. #new mother, #finding strength, #African women. It was vague enough to avoid legal trouble but clear enough that anyone who knew what was happening would understand. Within minutes, comments flooded in. Friends offering support. Family members telling her to be patient. Strangers sharing their own stories of surviving cheating spouses and domestic betrayal. But one comment stood out, from an account she didn't recognize. Mrs. Okonkwo, you don't know me, but Chike destroyed my marriage too. I was his colleague's wife. What he did to my family. I have evidence. I'll send you everything. Make him pay. What do you think will happen when Chike sees that Instagram post? Comment below. And if you're enjoying this story, smash that like button and share with friends who love real African drama. The morning sun cast long shadows across the law offices of Okafor and Associates in Ikoyi. Adana sat across from Uncle Emeka, who'd spent the night reviewing her case. Her mother had accompanied her, finally accepting that this wasn't going away quietly. Mrs. Adeyemi sat silent, her face drawn, hands clutching her handbag like a lifeline. Ada, I won't lie to you, Uncle Emeka said, spreading papers across his mahogany desk. Chaik has hired Bayo Adalik's firm. They're the best divorce lawyers in Lagos. Expensive, ruthless, and very good at making mothers look unfit. But we have something they don't expect. What's that? Numbers. He turned his laptop around. After your Instagram post last night, my office was flooded with calls and emails. 7 women, Ada. 7 different women with documented evidence of Chaik's harassment, manipulation, and in 3 cases, financial exploitation. He promised them investments in his real estate projects, took their money, and ghosted them. 1 woman lost her life savings. Adana's mother gasped. This is the man my daughter married? This is who I told her to forgive. Uncle Emeka's expression was grave. Mrs. Adeyemi, your son-in-law has been running a long-term pattern of deception. The infidelity in marriage is just the surface. Underneath, there's financial fraud, emotional manipulation, and something else. He pulled out another document. The Dubai investors he's meeting with? They're from a conservative Muslim business family. They're investing $50 million in his new project based on his reputation as a stable, family-oriented businessman. If they knew about his affairs, the threats, the other women, they'd pull out immediately. That's leverage, Adana said softly. He can't afford to have his dirty laundry aired publicly. Exactly. But Ada, using this means going nuclear. It means exposing everything. Your marriage will be dissected in public. People will talk. Some will blame you. Lagos society loves tearing down women who fight back. Before Adana could respond, her phone rang. Chaik. She put it on speaker. Ada, we need to talk reasonably. His voice was calm now, controlled. The drunk, abusive version from last night had been replaced by the charming businessman. I spoke with my mother this morning. She's willing to mediate. We can work this out. Marriage counseling, therapy, whatever you need. But this divorce talk is hurting our family. Our family. Adana's voice was ice. You mean the family you destroyed when you slept with my sister? Or the family you threatened to take my son from? Which family are we saving, Chaik? Silence. Then, I never should have said those things last night. I was drunk, angry. You ambushed me with all this divorce talk right before a crucial meeting. But Ada, I'm willing to change. For Chinedu. For us. Uncle Emeka scribbled a note. Don't believe him. Stalling tactic. Change. Adana laughed bitterly. You've been cheating since before our wedding. Ngozi is pregnant with your child. You've harassed women at your office. You've defrauded investors. What part of that changes with an apology? Another silence. When Chaik spoke again, the charm was gone. How did you? Who's been talking to you? Ada, those women are lying. They're just bitter because I rejected them. And Ngozi being pregnant doesn't mean it's mine. Your sister sleeps around. Everyone knows that. I have proof, Chaik. Screenshots. Bank transfers. Video evidence. And I'm meeting with Mercy Adelik this afternoon. How many more women should I talk to before you admit the truth? She could hear him breathing heavily on the other end. You're making a mistake. My lawyers will destroy you. They'll prove you're an unfit mother, mentally unstable, suffering from postpartum depression. They'll show the court you're keeping my son from me. By the time we're done, you'll be lucky to get supervised visitation once a month. Uncle Emeka took the phone. Mr. Okonkwo, this is Emeka Okafor, Mrs. Okonkwo's legal counsel. Your threats have been recorded and will be presented to the court as evidence of intimidation. I suggest you contact your own lawyer before making any more statements. The line went dead. Mrs. Adeyemi was crying now, quiet tears rolling down her cheeks. I'm sorry, Ada. I'm so sorry. I thought I was protecting you by telling you to stay. I thought I was teaching you how to survive marriage the way I survived mine. But all I did was enable a man who doesn't deserve you. Adana took her mother's hand. You taught me what you knew, Mama. But we can break these cycles. We can teach the next generation differently. The meeting with Mercy Adelique that afternoon was eye-opening. The young woman, probably 26 at most, sat nervously in the cafe, her hands wrapped around an untouched cappuccino. "I almost didn't come," Mercy admitted. "Mr. Okonkwo is powerful. He has connections everywhere. But when I saw your post, I thought, maybe if we all speak up together, someone will finally listen." "Tell me what happened." Mercy's story spilled out, a narrative painfully familiar to anyone who'd experienced workplace harassment. Chaik had hired her as his personal assistant 18 months ago. At first, everything was professional. Then came the late-night texts, the inappropriate comments about her appearance, the invitations to discuss projects at hotels instead of the office. "When I refused, he made my work-life hell," Mercy said, her voice shaking. "Changed my schedule so I'd miss important meetings. Gave my assignments to other people. Started rumors that I was sleeping with clients. I went to HR, filed a formal complaint. They did an investigation and concluded it was a misunderstanding. But I have all the messages, Mrs. Okonkwo. Every text, every email where he propositioned me." "Why didn't you quit?" "I needed the job. I'm the oldest of 6 children. My father died last year. This salary feeds my family." Tears welled up. "But it's been destroying me. When I saw your post, I realized I can't keep silent anymore. Not if it means other women might go through this too." Adana hugged her, this stranger who'd become an ally in the war against domestic betrayal and abuse of power. "Thank you for trusting me. Uncle Emeka will need to speak with you. Get your statement officially recorded. Are you prepared for that?" Mercy nodded. "I'm scared. But I'm more scared of staying silent." By the time Adana returned to the penthouse that evening, everything had shifted. The apartment that once felt like a prison now felt like a war room. Oluchi was there with another woman, the mysterious person who'd commented on Instagram. "Ada, this is Kemi Basharan," Oluchi introduced. "She's the colleague's wife Chaik destroyed." Kemi was elegant, perhaps in her mid-40s, dressed in expensive Ankara but with eyes that held deep pain. She didn't waste time with pleasantries. "3 years ago, my husband Tund worked with Chaik on a joint venture," Kemi began. "They were friends, or so we thought. Chaik came to our home for dinners, held my babies, called us family. Then one night at a company party, I had too much wine. I was going through fertility treatments. The hormones, the stress, I wasn't myself. Chaik drove me home while Tund stayed to close the bar." Adana's stomach dropped, already knowing where this was going. "He assaulted me in my own driveway. When I told Tund, he confronted Chaik. But Chaik had already planned ahead. He'd taken photos of me drunk at the party, created fake text messages making it look like I'd been flirting with him for months. He told everyone I'd seduced him and then cried rape when I got caught." Kemi's voice was steady but her hands trembled. "Tund believed him. My marriage ended. I lost custody of my children because Chaik's lawyers painted me as an unstable, alcoholic seductress. Mrs. Okonkwo, he didn't just ruin my marriage. He destroyed my entire life." "Why didn't you fight back?" Adana asked softly. "I tried. But Chaik had money, lawyers, connections. I was just a housewife with no proof except my word against his. The system protected him." Kemi pulled out a thick envelope. "But I never stopped documenting. Every lie he told, every person who corroborated his version, I kept records. I hired investigators to follow him, hoping to find evidence that would vindicate me. What I found instead was a pattern. You're not his first wife, Ada. There was someone before you." The room went silent. "What do you mean?" Adana whispered. "Chaik was married before. A customary marriage when he was 25, before he got rich. Her name was Amara. They had a daughter together. When his business started taking off, he abandoned them. Told everyone she'd died in childbirth, along with the baby. But Amara is alive, Ada. She's living in Enugu with their 9-year-old daughter. And she's been trying to get child support for years, but Chaik's lawyers keep blocking her." Adana felt the room spin. He has another child? Another wife he erased from existence. A wife he claimed was dead so he could marry you without complications. Kemi's eyes burned with vindication. I found Amara 6 months ago. She's been too scared to come forward because Chaik threatened her family. But when I told her about you, about what he's doing to another woman, she's ready to testify. She has marriage certificates, photos, birth records. Everything you need to prove Chaik is a liar and a bigamist. Uncle Emeka, who'd arrived during Kemi's story, was already on his phone. This changes everything. If we can prove he committed bigamy, that his marriage to you might not be legally valid because he never properly dissolved his first marriage, it affects custody, property rights, everything. But that means my marriage was a lie, Adana said slowly. That Chinedu was born to a marriage that wasn't real. It means Chaik has been committing fraud, Uncle Emeka corrected. And it means we have more leverage than he could possibly imagine. Ada, with this information, we can not only win the divorce, we can ensure you get primary custody, a fair share of marital assets, and potentially see him face criminal charges. Adana's phone buzzed. A text from Chaik. I just spoke with my mother. We're having a family meeting tomorrow at her house in Ikoyi. You, me, both our mothers, the elders. We'll sort this out the traditional way. If you don't come, everyone will know you're the one destroying this family. This was it, the power play she'd been expecting. The co-parenting conflict was escalating into a full family tribunal, where tradition and cultural expectations would be weaponized against her. Where elders would lecture her about submission, where her own family might pressure her to reconcile for the sake of avoiding public disgrace. Don't go, Oluchi urged. It's a trap. They'll gang up on you, make you feel guilty, pressure you into dropping everything. But Uncle Emeka had a different perspective. Actually, I think you should go. But not alone, and not unprepared. This meeting could work in our favor if we play it right. How? Adana asked. Because if Chaik wants to do this the traditional way, with elders and family involved, then we bring our own witnesses. We bring evidence. We turn his tribunal into his trial. Uncle Emeka's smile was sharp. Let him think he's ambushing you. Instead, we'll ambush him with the truth. That night, after everyone left, Adana sat in the nursery watching Chinedu sleep. Tomorrow would determine everything. She thought about Amara, trapped in Enugu with a daughter Chaik had erased from his history. She thought about Mercy, harassed at work with nowhere to turn. She thought about Kemi, whose life had been destroyed by one man's lies. And she thought about Ngozi, her own sister, carrying Chaik's baby, thinking she'd won some prize. Her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Mrs. Okonkwo, my name is Amara Okonkwo. Kemi told me you might call. I've been silent for 9 years, but I'm ready to speak now. My daughter deserves better than a father who pretends she doesn't exist. Can we talk? Adana's hands trembled as she typed back. Yes. Let's talk. And tomorrow, let's make sure everyone hears the truth. She looked at the clock, midnight. In 12 hours, she'd walk into that family meeting. Chaik thought he'd break her with tradition, shame her with cultural expectations, use family values as a weapon. He thought she'd crumble under the weight of elders' disapproval and mother's guilt. He had no idea what was coming. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. What do you think will happen at the family meeting? Drop your predictions in the comments below. The Okonkwo family mansion in Old Ikoyi was imposing, a colonial-era structure that screamed old money and tradition. Adana arrived with her mother, Uncle Emeka, and her father, who'd flown in from Abeokuta that morning. Chief Adeyemi had been silent during the drive, but his presence spoke volumes. Despite his wife's earlier pressure for Ada to submit, seeing his daughter's evidence had changed everything. Remember, Uncle Emeka whispered as they approached the front door. Stay calm. Don't let them provoke you. We have the truth on our side. The sitting room was arranged like a courtroom. Chaik's mother sat in the center, flanked by 3 elderly men, family elders wearing traditional agbada. Chaik sat to her right, looking confident in his cream kaftan. To Adana's shock, Ngozi was there too, sitting in the corner, her barely there pregnancy bump visible in her fitted dress. The disrespect was calculated, designed to humiliate. "Ada, you've finally arrived," Mrs. Okonkwo said, her voice formal. "We've been waiting. Please, sit." The implication was clear. Adana was late, disrespectful, the problem. Never mind that the meeting time had been set unilaterally without consulting her schedule. Never mind that she had a 3-week-old baby who'd needed feeding before she could leave. "Good afternoon, Ma." "Good afternoon, elders," Adana greeted, executing a perfect traditional greeting despite her Western dress. She'd worn white deliberately, the color of purity, of truth. Her mother wore matching white, a silent statement of solidarity. Elder Okoye, the oldest of the 3 men, spoke first. "Adana Okonkwo, we gather today because you've brought shame to this family. Your husband's mother tells us you want to leave your marriage barely 2 years after your wedding, just weeks after giving birth to a son. This is unacceptable behavior for a married woman." "With respect, sir, I'm here to address the real shame in this family," Adana replied, her voice steady. Chaik leaned forward. "Ada, please. Let's not do this. I've told everyone I'm willing to forgive your outburst, your accusations. We can start fresh if you just apologize to my mother and drop this divorce nonsense." "Forgive me." Adana's voice rose slightly. "Forgive me for what? For catching you in bed with my sister? For discovering you've been cheating throughout our marriage? For refusing to let you verbally abuse me? Those are lies." Mrs. Okonkwo stood up. "My son would never." "I have video evidence," Adana interrupted. Uncle Emeka pulled out his laptop. "Would the elders like to see the recording from 2 nights ago, where Chaik came home drunk and called me a beast? Where he threatened to take my son? Where he admitted to affairs?" The elders shifted uncomfortably. Video evidence was hard to dismiss, harder than a woman's word. Elder Okoye raised his hand. "We don't need to see such things. This is a family matter, not a court case. Ada, you're young. You don't understand marriage yet. Men sometimes stray. It's our nature. A good wife learns to manage her home, to keep her husband satisfied so he doesn't need to look elsewhere." "Is that what you told Amara?" The question came from behind them. Everyone turned. A woman stood in the doorway, slight build, beautiful features marked by years of hardship, holding the hand of a young girl who looked exactly like Chaik. "Who are you?" Mrs. Okonkwo demanded. "How dare you enter my home uninvited?" "I'm Amara Okonkwo, Chaik's first wife. This is Chidinma, his first daughter." Amara's voice was quiet but firm. "And I was invited, by Mrs. Adana Okonkwo, who, unlike your son, actually wants the truth to come out." The room erupted. Chaik went pale. Mrs. Okonkwo collapsed back into her chair. The elders were shouting over each other. Ngozi looked like she might vomit. "That's not possible," Chaik stammered. That marriage wasn't valid. It was just a small traditional ceremony, nothing legal." "We have the certificate," Uncle Emeka said calmly, pulling out documents. "Customary marriage, registered in Enugu State, 2014. Never dissolved, never divorced. Which means, Mr. Okonkwo, that your marriage to Adana may constitute bigamy." "No." Chaik stood up, his polished facade crumbling. "No, this is, Amara, what are you doing? I paid you to stay quiet. I sent money for the child." "You sent 3,000 naira last year," Amara said, her voice breaking. 3,000 naira for a child you created and abandoned. While you built this empire, my daughter went to bed hungry. While you married Ada and lived in Banana Island, we were in a single room in a face-me-I-face-you compound. Your own daughter, Chaik. Your own blood." Chidinma, who looked about 9, stared at her father with a mixture of longing and hurt that was painful to witness. "Daddy, Mama said you'd come back. She said you were just busy." The silence that followed was deafening. Elder Okoye turned to Chaik. "Is this true? You have a child you abandoned." It was complicated," Chaik said, his smooth charm deserting him. I was young, poor. I couldn't afford a family then. I told her I'd come back when I was established. You told everyone we died. Amara's composure shattered. You told your mother, your friends, even Ada that your first wife and child died in childbirth. You erased us so you could build your perfect life. Do you know what that did to me? To your daughter? She grew up thinking her father was dead. Mrs. Okonkwo's face had gone gray. Chike, you told me they died. You showed me photos, cried about your loss. I prayed for their souls. Because you would never have accepted her. Chike exploded. She's from a poor family, barely educated. You wanted me to marry someone from a good family, someone respectable like Ada. What was I supposed to do? Tell the truth. Chief Adeyemi spoke for the first time, his voice thunderous. You were supposed to tell the truth. Instead, you committed fraud, lied to my daughter, entered into a false marriage, and now you have the audacity to sit here and demand she apologize to you. Uncle Emeka distributed copies of documents to the elders. Gentlemen, you wanted this handled traditionally. Let's talk tradition. In Igbo culture, what happens to a man who abandons his first wife and child? What happens to a man who commits bigamy? What happens to a man who brings shame to both families through deception? The elders were speechless, flipping through marriage certificates, birth records, bank statements showing Chike's token payments to Amara over the years. Elder Okoye finally spoke, his voice heavy. This is beyond family mediation. This is criminal. Mrs. Okonkwo, he addressed Chike's mother, your son has brought unprecedented shame to your family. Not just through adultery, but through abandonment, fraud, and bigamy. The young women before us, Adana and Amara, are both victims of his deception. But my grandson, Mrs. Okonkwo whispered. Chinedu has a father who's a liar, Adana said firmly. And I won't raise my son thinking this behavior is acceptable. Ma, you told me to endure. You told me this is what women do. But look at Amara. Look at what enduring got her. 9 years of poverty and pain while Chike lived in luxury. Is that what you want for your grandson? To grow up thinking it's okay to treat women like disposable property. From the corner, Ngozi suddenly stood up. This is all Ada's fault. If she'd been a better wife, if she hadn't let herself go after the baby, Chike wouldn't have needed me. And Amara, you're just bitter because he upgraded. The slap came from an unexpected source. Mrs. Okonkwo herself struck Ngozi across the face. Get out of my house, the older woman said, her voice shaking. You seduced my son, disrespected your sister, and dare to speak in this gathering? Out. Ngozi fled, crying, her careful plan to replace Adana crumbling around her. Mrs. Okonkwo turned to Adana, tears streaming down her face. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, my daughter. I thought I was protecting my family, protecting tradition. But all I did was enable my son's wickedness. I raised him wrong. I taught him that being a man means you can do whatever you want without consequences. The vulnerability in her former mother-in-law's voice almost broke Adana's resolve. Almost. But then she looked at Chidinma, this little girl who'd been denied her father, and her spine stiffened. Ma, I accept your apology. But apologies don't change the facts. Your son needs to face consequences, legally and socially. He needs to pay child support to Amara. He needs to acknowledge his daughter. And he needs to give me a fair divorce settlement and shared custody arrangement for Chinedu that prioritizes our son's well-being over his pride. You can't do this to me, Chike said desperately, looking at the elders. I have business deals pending. Investors coming. If this gets out, I'll be ruined. My reputation. Should have thought about that before you ruined multiple women's lives, Elder Okoye said coldly. Young man, we came here expecting to counsel a young wife about her duties. Instead, we've discovered a snake in our midst. You will do as Adana requests. You will support both your children. You will give her a fair settlement. Or we will ensure every family in Lagos knows exactly what kind of man you are. The threat from the elders, men Chike had thought would be his allies, was devastating. These were his mother's kinsmen, men with connections throughout Lagos society. If they turned against him, his social standing would collapse. "I need time," Chike said weakly, "to sort out the business implications, to figure out the finances." "You have 1 week," Uncle Emeka said. 1 week to have your lawyers draft a fair settlement agreement. Full disclosure of assets, reasonable child support for both children, primary custody to Adana with visitation rights for you pending a psychological evaluation. If we don't have an agreement in 7 days, we file in court, and everything becomes public record. As the meeting dissolved, people began leaving in small groups. Amara approached Adana, Chidinma still clutching her hand. "Thank you," Amara whispered. "For 9 years, I thought I was alone. I thought no one would believe me against a man like Chike. You gave me my voice back." Adana hugged her, this woman who should have been her rival but was instead her ally. "We're not enemies, Amara. We're both survivors of the same man. And now we'll make sure our children don't grow up with his lies." Chidinma looked up at Adana shyly. "I have a brother?" "Yes, sweetheart. You have a baby brother named Chinedu. And when he's older, he's going to be so excited to meet his big sister." The little girl's face lit up, and for a moment, Adana saw hope, the possibility that something good could come from all this pain. Outside, Chief Adeyemi pulled his daughter aside. "Ada, I'm proud of you. Your mother and we taught you the wrong things about marriage. We taught you to endure instead of how to demand respect. But you've taught us something today. You've shown us that strength isn't suffering in silence. It's standing up and saying, enough." As they drove away from the Okonkwo mansion, Adana looked back at the imposing structure. Just hours ago, she'd been dreading this meeting, expecting to be broken down by tradition and family pressure. Instead, she'd exposed the truth, found an unexpected ally, and watched Chike's careful facade shatter. But she knew this wasn't over. Men like Chike didn't go down without a fight. The next week would be crucial and dangerous. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "You just made a very big mistake. You don't know who you're dealing with. I will destroy you." The threat was clear. The war had just escalated. What do you think Chike will do next? Will he accept defeat or fight dirty? Comment your thoughts below and don't forget to share this story. The week following the family meeting passed in a blur of legal consultations, document reviews, and sleepless nights. Adana had moved temporarily to her parents' home in Surulere, taking Chinedu with her. The penthouse in Banana Island no longer felt safe, especially after the threatening message. Uncle Emeka had hired private security, a necessary precaution after 2 concerning incidents. First, someone slashed the tires on Adana's car while it was parked at the law office. Then, a journalist had shown up at her parents' compound asking invasive questions about her mental health and fitness as a mother. The smear campaign had begun. "Chike's playing dirty," Oluchi reported during their daily check-in. "He's got PR people working overtime. I've seen 3 different blogs already posting anonymous insider accounts about you having postpartum psychosis, being vindictive, trying to trap him with a baby." "Let them talk," Adana said, though her hands shook as she nursed Chinedu. "We have evidence. Truth beats gossip." But truth was proving complicated. Uncle Emeka had discovered that many of Chike's assets were hidden in shell companies, offshore accounts, and properties registered under his mother's name. The man who'd claimed to be a self-made real estate mogul had been systematically hiding money for years, probably anticipating exactly this scenario. "The good news," Uncle Emeka explained during their strategy session, "is that we have forensic accountants tracking everything. The bad news is that this process could take months. Chike's lawyers are stalling, filing motion after motion, requesting extensions. They're trying to drain your resources, make you give up." "I'm not giving up." Adana's voice was steel. "What about Amara? Is she okay?" "That's actually why I called this meeting." Uncle Emeka looked grave. Amara received a visit yesterday from 2 men claiming to be from social services. They said they'd received anonymous complaints about her fitness as a parent, wanted to inspect her home, interview Chidinma. When she asked for proper identification and refused to let them in without her lawyer present, they threatened her. Let me guess, they weren't really from social services. No. We're assuming they were hired by Chike to intimidate her. We filed a police report and gotten Amara an emergency protective order. But Ada, this shows how far Chike's willing to go. He's not just fighting the divorce, he's trying to destroy anyone who stands against him. Adana thought about the threatening message, the slashed tires, the fake journalists. This wasn't just about divorce or custody anymore. This was about power, control, revenge. Chike had built his entire identity on being untouchable, respected, feared. She'd exposed his carefully constructed image, and now he wanted blood. We need to be smarter than him, she said slowly. What's his weakness? Everyone has one. Money, Uncle Emeka answered immediately. Everything Chike does comes back to money and status. His business reputation is everything. Those Dubai investors, the $50 million deal, it's supposed to close next week. If that falls through, his entire financial house of cards could collapse. Then maybe the investors need to know who they're really doing business with. Ada, Uncle Emeka warned, that's dangerous territory. If you directly interfere with his business deals, he could sue for tortious interference. We'd be giving him ammunition. But if someone else, someone with their own grievances, happened to share information with these investors. Adana let the implication hang. Uncle Emeka was quiet for a moment, then nodded slowly. Kemi Basharan. She has legitimate reasons to want Chike held accountable. If she were to reach out to his business partners, share her documented experiences, that's not interference, that's disclosure. They spent the next hour carefully planning their next moves. Every action had to be legal, documented, defensible in court. But within those boundaries, there was still room to apply pressure. That evening, Adana received an unexpected visitor. Mercy Adelik, the young woman from Chike's office, arrived at her parents' home looking terrified. Mrs. Okonkwo, I'm so sorry to come unannounced, but I didn't know where else to go. Mercy was shaking, her professional demeanor completely shattered. I've been fired. HR called me in today and said they were terminating my employment effective immediately. They claimed it was performance-related, but I know it's because I spoke to you. And tonight, when I got home, my apartment had been broken into. Nothing was stolen, but my laptop was gone, the one with all my backup files about Chike's harassment. Adana's mother brought Mercy water and a chair. Did you call the police? Yes, but what can they do? There's no evidence of who did it, and the laptop wasn't even that expensive. They won't prioritize it. But Mrs. Okonkwo, that laptop had everything. Emails, messages, my journal documenting every inappropriate interaction. Without it, I can't prove anything. Did you have cloud backup? Adana asked urgently. Mercy's face crumpled. I did, but when I tried to log in just now, my account had been deleted. Someone hacked it and erased everything. It's like the last 18 months never happened. I have nothing. Adana's phone buzzed. Another message from the unknown number. Tell your little friends to stay quiet. This is just a preview. Next time, it won't be just a laptop that disappears. The threat was explicit now. Chike wasn't just defending himself. He was actively attacking anyone who supported Adana. The emotional manipulation, the intimidation tactics, the systematic destruction of evidence. It was all calculated to make them powerless. Mercy, I need you to think very carefully, Adana said. Did you email any of those files to anyone? Print anything out? Tell anyone specific details? Wait. Mercy sat up straighter. I did email some screenshots to my personal account. My Gmail, not the work account. And I printed out a few of the worst messages and kept them in my desk at work, but after I got fired, I couldn't go back for them. What about your work desk? Would those printouts still be there? Maybe, if HR hasn't cleaned it out yet. But I can't exactly walk back into that building. Security won't let me in now that I'm terminated. Uncle Emeka, who'd been listening quietly, made a phone call. After a brief conversation, he turned to them with a small smile. I know someone in the cleaning crew at Chike's building. For a reasonable fee, they might be able to retrieve items from your desk after hours. No breaking and entering, they have legitimate access. They'd just be recovering your personal property that you weren't given a chance to collect. It was a risk, but they were running out of options. Evidence was disappearing faster than they could protect it. They needed something concrete, something Chaik's people hadn't managed to destroy yet. While Uncle Emeka coordinated the desk retrieval, Adana checked on Chinedu, still sleeping peacefully, unaware of the war being waged around him. Her mother joined her in the room. "Ada, I'm scared for you," Mrs. Adeyemi admitted. "This man, he's more dangerous than I understood. Maybe you should consider not giving up, but perhaps finding a middle ground? Taking a settlement, moving somewhere quiet, starting over. Mama, if I run now, Chaik wins. And the next woman he hurts has no one to stand with her." Amara lived in silence for 9 years. Mercy lost her job for speaking up. Kemi lost her family. How many more women should suffer before someone says enough? But what if he hurts you? Really hurts you? Then you make sure my son knows his mother fought for him. That she didn't teach him by example that men can abuse women without consequences. Adana touched her mother's face gently. "Mama, you stayed in your marriage. You endured what you had to endure. I'm not judging you for that. You did what you had to do with the tools you had. But I have different tools now. I have education, resources, laws that protect women better than they did in your generation. If I don't use them, what's the point of progress?" Her mother's eyes filled with tears. "When did my baby girl become so brave?" "When I became a mother myself. When I realized that breaking the cycle means being willing to break." Around midnight, Uncle Emeka's phone rang. The cleaning crew had successfully retrieved Mercy's desk items, including a folder of printouts documenting Chaik's harassment, complete with dates, times, and witnesses. It wasn't everything, but it was something. More importantly, they'd found something else, a USB drive taped under Mercy's desk drawer. When they opened it on Uncle Emeka's secure laptop, they discovered a treasure trove, not just Mercy's files, but files from other women at the office who'd apparently been sharing evidence with each other, building a case they'd been too afraid to file. "This is explosive," Uncle Emeka said, scrolling through document after document. "This isn't just harassment. This is a pattern. Sexual misconduct, financial impropriety, fraud. Ada, with this, we don't just win the divorce. We potentially put him in prison." But even as relief flooded through her, Adana's phone rang. Chaik's number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Ada." His voice was strange, not angry, not charming, but something that sent chills down her spine. "I know you think you're winning. I know you think you have me cornered. But you don't know everything. You don't know what I'm capable of when I'm truly threatened. I built everything I have from nothing. I won't let you destroy it." "Then you shouldn't have built it on lies, Chaik." "Everyone lies, Ada. Everyone has secrets. You want to air mine? Fine. But remember, I know all your secrets too. Your father's business that's actually drowning in debt. Your mother's prayer meetings that are really gambling sessions. Your best friend Oluchi's wife who's actually in a relationship with her female boss. Should I start talking about those things? Should I make everyone you love suffer for your crusade?" The threats against her were one thing. Threats against her family, her friends, that was different. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" "How about this? Tomorrow morning, check the society pages. You might find some interesting stories about the Adeyemi family." He hung up. Adana stood frozen. Was he bluffing? Or did he really have damaging information about her family? Her father's business had always been struggling. Was it worse than she knew? Her mother's prayer meetings were legitimate, weren't they? And Oluchi. Adana had suspected her best friend might be in a relationship with her colleague, but Oluchi had never confirmed it. If that information came out in conservative Lagos society, especially if Oluchi's husband found out, it could destroy her friend's life. "What did he say?" Uncle Emeka asked, seeing her expression. He's going to start exposing everyone around me, using their secrets as leverage to make me back down. Then we move faster. We file everything tomorrow, the divorce petition, the fraud allegations, the harassment evidence. We go public before he can control the narrative. Yes, it might get messy. Yes, people might get hurt. But Ada, if we don't move now, he'll pick you off one by one until you're isolated and powerless. It was a brutal calculation. Strike first and accept collateral damage, or wait and watch Chaik systematically destroy everyone she loved. Adana looked at Chinedu, still sleeping peacefully. This was the world she was fighting for him to grow up in, one where truth mattered more than power, where consequences existed for bad behavior, where women weren't disposable. "Do it," she said. "File everything. Tomorrow morning. And Uncle Emeka? Make sure we have extra security. If Chaik's threatening to expose secrets, he might do worse." That night, Adana couldn't sleep. She drafted messages to Oluchi, to her parents, to everyone who might be caught in the crossfire. Warned them. Apologized in advance. Explained why this fight was worth the cost. Oluchi's response came at 3 a.m. "Ada, I'm not afraid of the truth. If my relationship comes out, then it comes out. Maybe it's time anyway. Don't you dare back down because of me. We fight together." Her father's response was shorter. "My business problems are my own. Your fight is righteous. Don't stop." As dawn broke over Lagos, Adana prepared for war. Uncle Emeka would file the papers at 9 a.m. By noon, Chaik's world would start collapsing. And by evening, her own life would be irrevocably changed. But as she nursed Chinedu in the quiet morning light, watching the city wake up through her parents' window, Adana felt something she hadn't felt in weeks: peace. Not because the fight was over, but because she'd chosen to fight at all. Whatever happened next, she'd done the right thing. If you're loving this revenge story, hit that subscribe button. What secrets do you think Chaik will expose? Comment below. The filing of the divorce papers created exactly the explosion Uncle Emeka had predicted. By 10 a.m., Chaik's lawyer had called 3 times, each conversation more panicked than the last. By noon, the first media outlet, a prominent Lagos blog, had picked up the story. By 2 p.m., #JusticeForAdana was trending on Nigerian Twitter. But Chaik had kept his promise too. The society pages featured a scandalous article: "Prominent banker's daughter destroys marriage while father's company faces fraud investigation." The piece was carefully worded to avoid libel but devastating nonetheless, painting Adana's father as corrupt and suggesting she'd married Chaik to access his money and was now trying to steal it in divorce. Her father took it stoically. "Let them write what they want. My books are clean. Let them investigate." But the article about Oluchi was worse. Married Lagos career woman living secret double life, complete with surveillance photos of Oluchi with her colleague at various restaurants. The comments section was brutal: homophobic slurs, calls for her to be fired, threats against her children. Adana called her best friend immediately. "Oluchi, I'm so sorry. This is my fault. I should have." "Stop." Oluchi's voice was firm despite clearly having been crying. "Ada, I've been living in fear for 3 years. Fear of being exposed, fear of losing everything. You know what? Now that it's out, I feel lighter. Terrified, yes, but lighter." My husband called. We're talking, really talking, for the first time in years. He said he suspected but was too afraid to ask. We might actually figure out something honest for once. So no, Ada, don't apologize. Chaik didn't destroy my life by exposing this. He freed me from hiding. Still, the guilt weighed heavy. That evening, as Adana sat with Uncle Emeka reviewing responses to the filing, her phone exploded with calls from media outlets, bloggers, even international news organizations interested in the African #MeToo story. The Dubai investors pulled out, Uncle Emeka reported, barely suppressing a smile. Kemi successfully contacted them yesterday with documented evidence of Chaik's pattern of deception. They released a statement this morning citing concerns about character and business ethics incompatible with their investment philosophy. $50 million. Gone. How is he reacting? Badly. His lawyer called again. Chaik wants to negotiate. He's willing to agree to most of your terms if you'll sign an NDA and stop the publicity. Adana laughed bitterly. An NDA? He wants to buy my silence after everything he's done. It's a common tactic. Pay the victim to stay quiet, preserve the abuser's reputation. But Ada, Uncle Emeka leaned forward, you should know what accepting would mean. Financial security, yes. Primary custody, yes. But also agreeing never to speak publicly about what happened. No interviews, no advocacy, no using your story to help other women. Before Adana could respond, her mother rushed into the room. Ada, turn on the TV. Channel 7. Now. The news broadcast showed a press conference. Chaik stood at a podium, looking haggard but defiant, flanked by his lawyer and his mother. Behind him, surprisingly, was Ngozi, still pregnant, still standing by him despite everything. I'm here today to address the vicious rumors and false allegations being spread by my estranged wife, Chaik began, his voice smooth despite the obvious stress. Adana and I are going through a difficult separation, as many couples do. However, she has chosen to weaponize the legal system and social media to destroy not just me, but my family, my business, and everyone associated with me. The allegations of bigamy are false. My previous relationship ended years ago and was never a legal marriage. The allegations of harassment from former employees are fabrications from disgruntled workers who were terminated for legitimate performance issues. Adana watched in disbelief as Chaik spun the entire narrative. He painted himself as the victim of a vindictive ex-wife suffering from postpartum mental illness. He claimed Adana had become obsessed with controlling him, had driven away his family and friends with paranoid accusations, and was now trying to ruin him financially because he'd asked for space after the baby was born. "What about your daughter?" a reporter shouted. "What about Chidinma?" Chaik's expression didn't change. "I have one child, my son Chinedu. Any other claims are part of the smear campaign against me. I've never denied supporting any child of mine, but I won't be trapped by false paternity claims either." The denial of Chidinma's existence was breathtaking in its cruelty. Somewhere in Enugu, that little girl was probably watching this, hearing her father deny she existed. "And Ngozi Adeyemi," another reporter called. "Is it true you had an affair with your wife's sister?" Ngozi stepped forward, placing her hand on Chaik's arm. "I'm not the other woman in this situation. Ada abandoned her marriage and her duties as a wife after having the baby. She became cold, distant, refusing intimacy. Chaik and I found comfort in each other during a difficult time, yes. But their marriage was already over. Ada had left emotionally long before. I'm pregnant with Chaik's child, and we're planning to marry as soon as the divorce is finalized. Unlike Ada, I know how to support my man." The betrayal from her own sister, delivered on live television, was stunning. Ngozi had completely rewritten the story, casting herself as the supportive partner and Adana as the cold, rejecting wife who'd driven Chaik into another woman's arms. "This is character assassination," Adana whispered. "He's turning everything around." "It's what abusers do," Uncle Emeka said grimly. "Darvo, deny, attack, reverse victim and offender. He's denying his actions, attacking your credibility, and positioning himself as the real victim. It's textbook." Adana's phone was blowing up with messages. Some supportive, people who believed her, who'd experienced similar situations. But many were cruel. "You destroyed a good man's life. Postpartum psychosis is real. Get help instead of revenge. Your sister is right. You let yourself go and now you're bitter." The public disgrace she tried to inflict on Chaik was backfiring. Half of Lagos seemed to believe his version of events, especially those who'd only heard his side from the press conference. "We need to respond," Oluchi said, arriving with her lawyer. She decided to use the exposure to file for divorce herself and come out publicly. "Ada, you need to tell your story. Your way. Unfiltered." "How?" "He has PR people, media connections. I'm just one woman." "You have something he doesn't," Oluchi countered. "The truth. And you have allies. Amara, Mercy, Kemi, me. We all have stories. What if we did our own press conference? All the women he's hurt, standing together. Uncle Emeka looked concerned. That's risky. It could look coordinated, vindictive. His lawyers would use it against you. Or it could show a pattern, Adana said slowly. One woman accusing a man can be dismissed. But 5, 10, all with documented evidence? That's harder to deny. They spent the next 3 hours organizing. Amara agreed to come from Enugu with Chidinma. The little girl's existence was the most damning evidence against Chike's lies. Mercy rallied 3 other women from the office who'd been harassed. Kemi brought documentation of her case. Even one of the women who'd lost money in Chike's investment schemes agreed to speak. They scheduled their press conference for the next morning at a neutral venue, the Civic Center in Victoria Island. Uncle Emeka drafted talking points, coached them on staying calm under hostile questions, and arranged for adequate security. That night, Adana received a call from an unexpected source, Mrs. Okonkwo. "Ada, I saw my son's press conference," the older woman said, her voice thick with emotion. "I sat in my sitting room and watched him lie to the entire country. Watched him deny his own daughter. Watched your sister stand there and lie about you. And I realized, I raised this. I created this monster by always protecting him, by teaching him that being a man meant never admitting fault, never showing weakness. Ma, I don't know what to say." "Don't say anything. Just listen. Tomorrow, when you do your press conference, I'll be there. Standing with you. My son needs to face consequences, real consequences, and if that means his own mother has to speak against him, then so be it. I failed Amara. I failed you. I won't fail the next woman by staying silent." Adana was speechless. The idea of Chike's own mother turning against him publicly was both vindication and tragedy. "Ma, are you sure? The family will survive. We've survived worse. But Ada, I need to ask you something. When you win, and you will win, please don't keep Chinedu from knowing his father's family. Not me, not his cousins, not the good parts of where he comes from. My son is flawed, perhaps irredeemably so. But his family isn't all bad. I would never keep Chinedu from knowing where he comes from," Adana promised. "Good and bad, he deserves to know his whole story." After hanging up, Adana drafted her statement for the press conference. She wrote and rewrote, trying to find the balance between truth and dignity, between exposing abuse and not becoming consumed by bitterness. Around 2 a.m., Chinedu woke for a feeding. As Adana nursed him in the quiet darkness, she thought about the press conference tomorrow. About standing in front of cameras and reporters, making herself vulnerable to public scrutiny and judgment. About the women who'd agreed to stand with her, risking their own reputations and privacy. She thought about Chidinma, who would finally have her existence acknowledged. About Mercy and the other women who'd lost jobs for speaking up. About Kemi, who'd waited 3 years for vindication. About Amara, who'd spent 9 years in silence. And she thought about all the women who'd come after them, the ones still trapped in marriages like hers, still being manipulated by men like Chike, still choosing between safety and truth. Her phone buzzed. A message from Chike, last chance. "Drop everything tomorrow. Take the settlement. Or I'll make sure you lose custody of Chinedu. I have psychologists who'll testify you're unfit. I have witnesses who'll say you've been unstable since the birth. I have the money to drag this out for years until you're bankrupt and broken. This is your final warning." Adana looked at her sleeping son, at his perfect trust, his innocence. What kind of mother would she be if she taught him that bullies win? That threats work? That women should accept abuse to avoid conflict? She typed her response, "See you in court. And tomorrow at the press conference. Bring your lawyers. You'll need them." Then she blocked his number. At 9 a.m. the next morning, the Civic Center was packed. Media from across Nigeria and several international outlets filled the venue. Adana stood backstage with her coalition, 8 women who'd agreed to speak, plus Mrs. Okonkwo, who sat in the front row as a silent statement of support. Uncle Emeka gave final instructions. "Remember, stay calm. Stick to facts. Don't let them provoke you into emotional responses. You're not here to destroy Chaik, you're here to tell the truth and seek justice. Adana walked onto the stage, the other women following. The camera flashes were blinding. She took her position at the podium, looking out at the sea of faces, some supportive, some skeptical, some openly hostile. "Thank you for coming," she began, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "My name is Adana Okonkwo, and I'm here today not for revenge, but for accountability. Yesterday, you heard my husband's version of our marriage. Today, you'll hear mine. Not just mine, actually. You'll hear from multiple women whose lives have been affected by a pattern of deception, manipulation, and abuse that has been enabled by silence and shame for too long." She proceeded to lay out everything, methodically and calmly. The discovery of the affair with Ngozi. The revelation of Chaik's first family. The harassment of employees. The financial fraud. Each claim was supported by documents displayed on screens behind her. Marriage certificates, bank statements, text messages, emails. When Amara stepped forward with Chidinma, the room went silent. The little girl looked exactly like Chaik. There was no denying the paternity. Amara's statement was brief but devastating. "For 9 years, I was told to stay quiet. To protect his reputation. To think of his career. Today, I'm thinking of my daughter, who deserves a father brave enough to acknowledge her existence." Mercy spoke about workplace harassment and the systematic cover-up. Kemi detailed the assault and subsequent character assassination. One by one, the women told their stories. Different details, but the same pattern of manipulation, abuse, and institutional protection of a powerful man. The questions from reporters were aggressive, exactly as expected. "Why didn't you come forward sooner? Are you coordinating this for a financial settlement? How do we know these allegations aren't exaggerated for sympathy?" Adana handled each question calmly, returning always to the evidence. "This isn't about sympathy. It's about accountability. We have documentation. We have witnesses. We have patterns. You don't have to take our word. You can review the evidence yourselves." Then a reporter asked the question that would define everything. "Mrs. Okonkwo, what do you want from all this? What's your end game?" Adana paused, looking at the other women on stage with her. At Mrs. Okonkwo in the front row, tears streaming down her face. At Uncle Emeka, who'd fought for her when she had no power. At Oluchi, who'd risked her own secrets to support her friend. "I want to show my son that his mother fought," she said finally. "I want other women in similar situations to know they're not alone. I want the systems that protect powerful men at the expense of vulnerable women to be challenged. And yes, I want a fair divorce settlement and custody arrangement that prioritizes my child's welfare. But most of all, I want the truth to matter. In a world where power often trumps justice, I want truth to win. Just this once." The press conference ended to mixed reactions. Some outlets praised their courage, others questioned their motives. Social media exploded with hashtags both supporting and attacking them. The story went international. BBC, CNN, Al Jazeera all picked it up as part of the broader conversation about domestic betrayal, infidelity, and women's rights in Africa. But the most important reaction came 6 hours later. The police commissioner announced an investigation into the harassment and fraud allegations. The Bar Association opened an inquiry into whether Chaik's lawyers had helped conceal evidence. And most significantly, Chaik's own law firm released a statement distancing themselves from him pending the outcome of investigations. His empire was crumbling, not because one woman spoke up, but because she'd refused to stand alone. That night, exhausted and emotionally drained, Adana finally allowed herself to hope. Not that everything would be easy, the legal battles would continue for months. Not that public opinion would universally support her. Many would always believe Chaik's version. But hope that by fighting, by refusing to be silenced, she'd changed something. Her phone rang. An unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Mrs. Okonkwo?" A woman's voice, young and scared. "My name is Blessing. I saw your press conference today. I'm one of the women your husband was seeing. I have evidence of other crimes, serious ones. Things he did that could put him in prison for years. I've been too scared to come forward, but after seeing you and those other women, I think I'm ready. Can we talk? Adana closed her eyes, overwhelmed. How many more women? How deep did this go? Yes, she said finally. Yes, we can talk. You're safe now. I promise. As she hung up, Adana realized this wasn't the end of her story. It was just the beginning. The divorce, the custody battle, the legal proceedings, all of that would take time. But something had shifted. She'd gone from victim to survivor to advocate. And there was no going back. Don't miss the next chapter. What crimes did Blessing discover? Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Blessing arrived at Uncle Emeka's office 3 days later, escorted by her own lawyer and carrying 2 banker's boxes full of evidence. She was perhaps 28, stylishly dressed in traditional wear, but her eyes held the haunted look of someone carrying terrible secrets. Before I begin, I need immunity, Blessing said, her hands shaking. What I'm about to tell you involves criminal activity that I was peripherally involved in. I didn't know at the time what he was really doing, but once I found out and tried to leave, he threatened me. I've been living in fear for 2 years. Uncle Emeka conferred with his colleague who specialized in criminal law. Tell us everything. We'll work with the authorities to negotiate immunity based on cooperation. But Blessing, you need to understand, if what you're saying is true, this goes beyond divorce court. This becomes a criminal matter. Blessing opened the first box, pulling out files and flash drives. Chaik doesn't just run a real estate business. He also runs a sophisticated money laundering operation. He uses property transactions to clean money for politicians and criminals, buying properties with dirty money, selling them at inflated prices, pocketing the difference. I was his accountant. I thought I was just processing legitimate transactions until I started noticing patterns. She laid out spreadsheets showing shell companies, offshore accounts, properties purchased and sold in rapid succession at suspicious prices. The amounts were staggering, millions of dollars moving through Chaik's businesses, all carefully structured to avoid detection. This property in Lekki, purchased for 20 million naira from Company A, which is owned by a politician currently under investigation for corruption, sold 6 months later to Company B for 45 million. Company B is also owned by the same politician, just structured differently. The profit split between Chaik and the politician. The money is now clean, and both parties made millions. Adana felt sick. She'd lived in luxury built on criminal proceeds. Chinedu's nursery had been decorated with blood money. Why are you coming forward now? Uncle Emeka asked. After 2 years of silence. Because I'm pregnant, Blessing said quietly, placing her hand on her barely visible bump. With his child. When I told him, he gave me money for an abortion and said if I didn't get rid of it, he'd destroy me the same way he was destroying you. But I can't do it. I want this baby. And I realized, if I stay silent, what kind of world am I bringing my child into? One where men like Chaik face no consequences? Where women have to choose between safety and truth? Another woman. Another pregnancy. Another child Chaik would try to deny or erase. The pattern was exhausting in its consistency. There's more, Blessing continued. Some of the properties he's laundering money through, they're development projects that were never completed. He took deposits from buyers, used the money for other purposes, and when buyers complained, he had them intimidated or bought off. There are at least 30 families who lost their life savings to his schemes. I have their files, their complaints, everything. This was bigger than domestic betrayal or infidelity. This was organized crime. This was fraud on a massive scale. This was corruption that touched politicians, judges, businessmen, Lagos elite protecting each other. Blessing, this evidence needs to go to EFCC, Uncle Emeka said, referring to Nigeria's Economic and Financial Crimes Commission. This isn't just civil litigation anymore. This is criminal prosecution. I know. But I need protection. Chaik has people everywhere. Police, politicians, even some EFCC officials. If I go to them directly, I'll disappear before I can testify. I've seen it happen to others who tried to expose him. The meeting stretched for hours as they documented everything, made copies, secured the evidence in multiple locations. By evening, they had a clear picture. Chaik wasn't just a cheating husband or workplace harasser. He was a criminal who'd been operating with impunity for years, protected by wealth, connections, and the fear of his victims. That night, Adana sat with her parents and Oluchi, trying to process the magnitude of what they'd discovered. Ada, this is dangerous territory, her father warned. If Chaik is involved with politicians and criminals at this level, they won't just let you expose them. These people have made problems disappear before. Are you saying I should stop? I'm saying you need to be realistic about the risks. This isn't just about winning custody of Chinedu anymore. This is about toppling a criminal enterprise. People have been killed for less. The words hung heavy. Until now, Adana had been fighting for her dignity, her son's future, justice for wronged women. But this was different. This was potentially life-threatening. Her mother spoke quietly. Ada, no one would blame you if you took the settlement Chaik offered. Took Chinedu somewhere safe. Started over quietly. You've already done more than anyone could have asked. You've exposed him, helped other women, changed the conversation. You don't have to be the one to finish this fight. It was tempting. Take the money, disappear, keep her son safe. Let someone else deal with the criminal prosecution. She'd done enough, hadn't she? But then she thought about Blessing, carrying another child Chaik would deny. About the 30 families who'd lost their savings. About the politicians and criminals who'd continue operating because everyone was too scared to stop them. If I walk away now, I'm just another woman who knew and stayed silent, Adana said finally. I'm not asking anyone else to risk themselves. But I have to see this through. For Chinedu. So he grows up in a world where people like his father face consequences. Oluchi gripped her hand. Then we see it through together. But Ada, we do it smart. We work with authorities who can be trusted. We don't take unnecessary risks. And we make sure you and Chinedu are protected. The next morning, Uncle Emeka arranged a meeting with a senior EFCC official who had a reputation for integrity, someone outside Chaik's network of influence. They presented Blessing's evidence along with a formal request for protection for all witnesses. The official, a no-nonsense woman named Commissioner Nkem Okafor, reviewed the documents with increasing gravity. This is significant. If even half of this is true, we're looking at charges that could put Mr. Okonkwo away for decades. Money laundering, fraud, corruption, these are serious crimes. Can you guarantee witness protection? Uncle Emeka asked. I can guarantee we'll investigate thoroughly. But Mrs. Okonkwo, you need to understand, investigations like this take time. Months, possibly years. And during that time, you'll be vulnerable. I can arrange some security, but I can't promise you'll be completely safe. I understand. There's something else you should know, Commissioner Okafor said. EFCC has had Mr. Okonkwo on our radar for 18 months. We've been building a case but haven't had enough evidence to move forward. Your information might be what we need to finally act. But Ada, this means you'll likely be called as a witness in criminal proceedings. Your life will be under intense scrutiny. Every financial transaction you've ever made, every conversation you've had with your husband, it all becomes evidence. The weight of it was crushing. Adana had wanted justice, but she hadn't fully understood the cost of seeking it. That afternoon, as she sat in her parents' home feeding Chinedu, her phone buzzed with a news alert: prominent businessman Chaik Okonkwo's offices raided by EFCC. The commission had moved faster than expected, apparently using Blessing's evidence to justify an immediate raid. Within hours, images flooded social media. Chaik being led out of his office building, boxes of documents being carried away, computers being seized. The man who'd built his identity on power and control was now visibly powerless, handcuffed, facing cameras that would broadcast his humiliation across the country. Adana felt no satisfaction, only exhaustion. This wasn't victory. It was just the next stage of a battle that seemed endless. Her phone rang. Mrs. Okonkwo, crying. Ada, they arrested my son. He's at the EFCC headquarters. His lawyers are there, but they're saying he might not get bail because he's a flight risk. Oh God, Ada, what have we done? Ma, we told the truth. Whatever happens now is the consequence of his choices, not ours. But he's my son. Despite everything, he's still my child. And now he might go to prison, might lose everything. His life is over. His life isn't over, it's just finally facing reality. Ma, all those women he hurt, all those families he defrauded, they matter too. Your son needs to be accountable. After the call, Adana sat in silence, grappling with complicated emotions. She'd wanted Chaik to face consequences, but seeing it actually happen, seeing him arrested, his mother devastated, his empire crumbling, felt more painful than triumphant. That evening, Ngozi showed up at her parents' compound, screaming at the gate. This is your fault. You destroyed him. He loved you, gave you everything, and you repaid him by turning him into a criminal. Security wouldn't let her in, but Adana went to the gate anyway, needing to face her sister one last time. Ngozi, he was already a criminal. I just exposed it. You're jealous. You always have been. Jealous that I'm younger, prettier, that he wanted me more than you. So you invented lies to destroy him and ruin my life. Your life. What about my life, Ngozi? What about our sisterhood? I gave you everything, paid your school fees, welcomed you into my home. And you repaid me by sleeping with my husband while I was pregnant. He was never really yours. You were just the respectable wife, the one his mother approved of. But I was the one he actually loved. If he loved you, where is he now? Why isn't he fighting for you the way these women are fighting for justice? Why are you standing here alone, pregnant and abandoned, while he's in EFCC custody worrying about saving himself? The question struck home. Ngozi's face crumpled. He said once the divorce was final, we'd get married. He promised. And you believed him. Just like I believed him when he promised to love and honor me. Just like Amara believed him when he promised to come back. Just like Blessing believed him when he said he loved her. Chaik makes promises to everyone and keeps them to no one. Ngozi collapsed against the gate, crying. What am I going to do? I'm 3 months pregnant. I quit my job to be with him. I have nothing. My family won't speak to me because of what I did to you. I'm alone. For a moment, Adana felt the pull of sisterhood, of family bonds that even betrayal couldn't completely break. Then she thought about the night she'd caught them together, about Chaik calling her a beast, about Ngozi's cruelty and complicity. You made choices, Ngozi. Now you live with them. Just like I'm living with mine. But unlike Chaik, I won't lie to you. Your baby is innocent in this. When you're ready, really ready to take responsibility for your part in this mess, my parents' door is open. Not for Chaik, not for excuses, but for genuine accountability and change. Until then, you're on your own. She walked back into the compound, leaving her sister crying at the gate. It hurt, but some bridges needed to burn before they could be rebuilt on honest foundations. That night, Commissioner Okafor called with an update. Mrs. Okonkwo, Mr. Chaik Okonkwo has been formally charged with money laundering, fraud, and corruption. He's been denied bail due to flight risk and the severity of the charges. The trial will likely begin in 3 months. I wanted you to know before it hits the news tomorrow. Thank you, Commissioner. There's something else. One of the politicians whose money he was laundering has agreed to testify in exchange for reduced charges. He's providing evidence of similar arrangements with other businessmen. This case is about to expand significantly. You and the other women who spoke up, you've opened a door to dismantling a much larger corruption network. I hope you understand the significance of what you've done. After hanging up, Adana sat in the darkness of the nursery, listening to Chinedu's gentle breathing. In 3 months, she'd be in court, testifying against her child's father. In front of cameras, judges, lawyers, and the whole nation watching. She thought about domestic betrayal, about infidelity in marriage, about all the private pain that women traditionally suffered in silence. She thought about public disgrace, How it was supposed to be the worst thing that could happen to a respectable woman. How fear of shame kept countless women trapped in abusive situations. But public disgrace, she was learning, wasn't the end. It was just a different beginning. Scary, uncertain, but honest. Her father appeared in the doorway. "Ada, you should sleep. Tomorrow will be another long day." "Papa, do you think I did the right thing? Or did I just destroy more lives than I saved?" Chief Adeyemi sat beside her, looking at his sleeping grandson. "You did what mothers have been doing since the beginning of time. You protected your child. Not just from physical harm, but from growing up in a world built on lies and injustice. Chinedu will grow up knowing his mother was brave. That she stood for something. That's worth more than any comfortable silence." In the darkness, Adana made peace with her choices. The path ahead was uncertain. Court dates, testimony, ongoing legal battles, raising a son without his father, navigating public scrutiny. But at least it was honest. At least she could look her son in the eye and say she'd fought. What do you think will happen at the trial? Comment below and share this story with someone who needs to hear it. 3 months passed in a blur of preparation, court appearances, and trying to maintain some normalcy for Chinedu, who was now 4 months old and blissfully unaware of the storm surrounding his existence. The trial of Chike Okonkwo had become Nigeria's most watched legal proceeding, with daily updates filling news cycles and social media. The courtroom in Lagos High Court was packed on the first day of testimony. Adana sat in the witness section, flanked by Uncle Emeka and security personnel. Across the aisle, Chike sat with his defense team, expensive lawyers who'd somehow managed to secure funding despite his assets being frozen. He looked thinner, older, the confidence that once defined him completely eroded. Their eyes met briefly. His expression held something she couldn't quite read, not quite hatred, not quite regret. Just emptiness. The prosecution called Adana as their first witness. As she took the stand, placing her hand on the Bible to swear her oath, she felt the weight of not just her own story, but all the women whose voices she carried. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Barrister Chinyu Obi, began gently. "Mrs. Okonkwo, thank you for your courage in testifying today. Can you tell the court about your marriage to the defendant?" Adana took a breath and began. She detailed their courtship, the wedding, the early signs she'd missed or dismissed. She described discovering the affair with Ngozi, finding out about Amara and Chidinma, learning about the harassment of employees. Each revelation was supported by evidence, photos, messages, bank statements. But it was when they got to the financial crimes that the testimony became crucial. "Did your husband ever discuss his business dealings with you?" Barrister Obi asked. "Initially, yes. He was proud of his success and would tell me about deals he'd closed. But about a year into our marriage, he stopped sharing details. He said I wouldn't understand the complexity of his business." "Did you ever notice anything unusual about his financial activities?" "I noticed we had multiple bank accounts, some in offshore locations. When I asked about them, he said they were for tax purposes. I didn't question it further. I trusted my husband." "Did you benefit from his illegal activities?" This was the question Adana had dreaded. "I lived in a home purchased with those proceeds. I wore clothes, used cars, lived a lifestyle funded by his business. I didn't know it was criminal at the time, but I benefited nonetheless. I'm not claiming innocence. I'm claiming ignorance that I now recognize was partially willful. I didn't ask enough questions because I didn't want to know the answers." The honesty was strategic but also necessary. Admitting her own complicity, even unwitting, gave her testimony credibility. Chike's defense attorney, a legendary lawyer named Bayo Adelik, was less gentle on cross-examination. "Mrs. Okonkwo, isn't it true that you only discovered these alleged crimes after you caught your husband with another woman?" "I discovered the infidelity first, yes. The financial crimes came to light as I investigated the affairs." How convenient. A woman scorned suddenly remembers all these incriminating details about her husband's business. Isn't it possible you're exaggerating or even fabricating some of these claims to punish him for his personal failings? The evidence isn't fabricated. Bank records, property documents, testimony from other witnesses. None of that is my invention. But you're testifying in exchange for immunity from prosecution, correct? You've admitted you benefited from these alleged crimes. Yet you won't face charges. Isn't this testimony simply a way to save yourself at your husband's expense? The accusation stung because it held a grain of truth. I'm testifying because what my husband did was wrong. Not just to me, but to dozens of people who lost money, to women who were harassed and threatened, to families who were defrauded. Yes, I've been granted immunity, but I would testify regardless. Some things matter more than personal safety. The cross-examination continued for hours, probing every inconsistency, questioning her motives, suggesting she was vindictive rather than truthful. By the time she left the stand, Adana was exhausted, but she'd held firm. Over the next weeks, other witnesses testified. Amara described Chaik's abandonment and threats. Mercy and other employees detailed workplace harassment and intimidation. Blessing, now 5 months pregnant, provided devastating testimony about the money laundering schemes she'd helped document. But the most damaging testimony came from the politician who'd agreed to cooperate. He laid out the entire operation, how Chaik had approached him initially, how the schemes had grown more sophisticated, how money moved through various channels to emerge clean. He named other politicians, businessmen, even some law enforcement officials who'd been complicit. The trial revealed a network of corruption far beyond one man's crimes. It exposed how Lagos elite protected each other, how money bought silence and complicity, how systems that should have caught these activities instead enabled them. During a recess, Adana encountered Mrs. Okonkwo in the hallway. The older woman looked devastated, aged by stress and shame. "Ada, please. Tell them about the good things too. Tell them Chaik isn't all bad. He built schools in his village. He employed people. He helped family members. He's not just the monster they're painting him as. Ma, I can only tell my truth. I can't erase his crimes by listing his charitable acts. Good people can do terrible things. That doesn't make the terrible things less terrible. But he's going to prison. 4 years, maybe decades. Chinedu will grow up without a father. Is that what you wanted? I wanted accountability. I wanted truth. I wanted other women to know they don't have to endure domestic betrayal and abuse in silence. Whether Chaik goes to prison isn't up to me. It's up to the law, the evidence, and the judge. I'm just one witness among many." Mrs. Okonkwo's face crumpled. "I've lost my son. My family name is destroyed. Everything we built, the respect, the standing in society, it's all gone. And for what? So you could feel vindicated." "No, Ma. So other mothers can teach their sons that actions have consequences. So other wives know they don't have to sacrifice themselves for family reputation. So other daughters understand they're worth more than silence." As the trial continued, public opinion remained divided. Some hailed Adana as a hero, a woman who'd stood against corruption and abuse. Others condemned her as a vindictive ex-wife who destroyed a successful man out of spite. The comment sections were brutal, with people dissecting every aspect of her appearance, her mothering, her choices. One evening, as she scrolled through particularly vicious social media attacks, Oluchi snatched her phone away. "Stop reading that garbage. These people don't know you. They don't know what you've been through. They're just projecting their own issues onto your story. But what if they're right? What if I am vindictive? What if I've destroyed more than I've fixed? Ada, listen to me. Since your press conference, my office has received 43 calls from women in similar situations asking for help. 43 women who stayed silent until they saw you speak up. That domestic violence shelter in Surulere? They've had to expand to accommodate the increase in women finally leaving abusive marriages. The Lagos State House of Assembly is drafting new legislation to strengthen penalties for workplace harassment. You didn't just fight for yourself. You changed the conversation. Don't let trolls make you forget that." The trial reached its climax in week 8. The judge, a stern woman named Justice Adebayo, heard closing arguments from both sides. The prosecution painted Chaik as a predator who'd systematically exploited women and corrupted systems for personal gain. The defense portrayed him as a flawed man whose mistakes had been weaponized by bitter ex-lovers and opportunistic politicians saving their own skins. Justice Adebayo took 2 weeks to deliberate. During that time, Adana tried to focus on Chinedu, who was developing his first real smile, learning to grab objects, becoming a person separate from the drama surrounding his birth. She took him to the park, to her parents' church for Thanksgiving, to markets where grandmothers cooed over him and offered unsolicited advice. She tried to imagine a future beyond the trial, where she might work again, what kind of home she'd build for herself and her son, how to process the trauma while moving forward. Uncle Emeka had secured a favorable divorce settlement. Chike's assets were frozen, but Adana would receive a portion once the criminal case concluded. It would be enough to start over, to give Chinedu stability. But first, she had to get through the verdict. The courtroom was even more packed than usual when Justice Adebayo returned with her decision. Cameras lined the back wall. International media had sent correspondence. This case had become symbolic of larger issues: corruption in Nigeria, women's rights in Africa, accountability for powerful men. Justice Adebayo's voice was clear and firm as she began reading her judgment. She methodically went through each charge, reviewing the evidence, assessing witness credibility, applying the law. On the charge of money laundering, the court finds the defendant guilty. On the charge of fraud, guilty. On the charge of corruption, guilty. Each guilty verdict landed like a hammer blow. Chike's face remained impassive, but his hands gripped the defendant's table until his knuckles turned white. When Justice Adebayo finished reading the verdicts, guilty on 17 of 20 charges, she moved to sentencing. Mr. Okonkwo, you have been found guilty of serious crimes that undermined public trust, defrauded innocent citizens, and corrupted institutions meant to serve the people. These crimes were not momentary lapses in judgment but calculated, systematic exploitation spanning years. However, the court also notes your cooperation in exposing other criminal networks and your lack of prior convictions. On the charge of money laundering, I sentence you to 15 years imprisonment. On the charge of fraud, 12 years. On corruption, 10 years. These sentences will run concurrently. You will serve 15 years in Kirikiri Maximum Security Prison. You are also ordered to make restitution to all documented victims of your fraud schemes. Your properties will be liquidated to satisfy these obligations. 15 years. Chinedu would be a teenager before his father walked free. The courtroom erupted. Cheers from some, protests from others. Mrs. Okonkwo collapsed in her seat, sobbing. Chike was led away in handcuffs, finally looking back at Adana with an expression she could now identify: defeat. Outside the courthouse, Adana faced a wall of cameras and reporters. Mrs. Okonkwo, how do you feel about the verdict? Are you satisfied with the 15-year sentence? What message do you have for other women in similar situations? Adana took a breath, choosing her words carefully. I feel relief that the truth was heard and justice was served. Not my justice, society's justice. As for other women facing domestic betrayal, infidelity, or abuse in any form, I'd say this: your voice matters. Your truth matters. Speaking up is terrifying, and there will be costs. But silence has costs too. You have to decide which costs you're willing to pay and what world you want to help create. Do you have any regrets? Many. I regret not seeing the signs earlier. I regret that my son won't have his father present during his childhood. I regret the pain this has caused to families on all sides. But I don't regret fighting for accountability. Some things are worth the cost. That evening, after the media circus died down, Adana sat with Chinedu in her parents' living room. The divorce had been finalized earlier that week. She was no longer Mrs. Okonkwo but Adana Adeyemi again. The name felt like reclaiming herself. Her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Thank you. My husband has been abusing me for 5 years. I saw you fight back and I finally had the courage to leave. My daughter and I are safe now. You saved more than just yourself. Then another. Because of your case, my company just implemented stronger harassment policies. Thank you for speaking up. And another. I'm a man, and I want to say thank you for showing my daughters that women don't have to accept mistreatment. I'm teaching my son different values because of your example. The messages kept coming. Dozens, then hundreds. Women sharing their stories, men pledging to do better, young people saying they'd learned about healthy relationships from watching the trial. Adana realized that while she'd been focused on her own survival, her fight had rippled outward in ways she couldn't have imagined. The personal had become political. The private pain had sparked public change. Ngozi reached out through their mother 2 days later. She'd given birth prematurely to a baby girl and wanted to apologize. Adana wasn't ready for forgiveness yet, the wounds were too fresh, but she agreed to meet. They sat in a neutral cafe, two sisters separated by betrayal but connected by blood and now by motherhood. "I'm sorry," Ngozi said simply. "I told myself so many lies, that you didn't really love him, that I was just finding happiness, that it wasn't that bad because you'd find someone else. But watching the trial, hearing what he did to all those women, realizing I was part of that pattern. Ada, I'm so sorry." "I'm not ready to say I forgive you," Adana replied honestly. "But I recognize you were manipulated too. Chaik is very good at making women feel special, chosen. I fell for it. You fell for it. Amara fell for it. We're not enemies. We're all survivors of the same manipulator. Can I ask you something?" Ngozi's voice was small. "How do I explain to my daughter who her father is? How do I tell her that her father is in prison, that I helped destroy my own sister's marriage to be with him, that everything about her beginning is tainted? You tell her the truth, age appropriately, and you teach her better. You show her that mistakes don't define us, how we respond to them does. You made terrible choices, Ngozi. So did I, in trusting blindly. We can't undo them. We can only do better going forward." The conversation didn't heal everything, but it was a start. Rebuilding family after betrayal would take years, maybe forever. But at least the lies were over. A week later, Amara visited Lagos with Chidinma. The court had ordered Chaik to acknowledge his daughter and establish child support, which would come from the liquidation of his assets. It wasn't much, but it was something. "I wanted to thank you," Amara said as their children played together, Chidinma making her baby brother laugh. "For 9 years, I felt like I didn't matter. Like my daughter didn't matter. You made us matter. You always mattered. The system just made you invisible." "But Amara, what are you going to tell Chidinma about her father?" "The truth. That he made mistakes. That he hurt people. But also that he's still her father, and she can decide what relationship she wants with him when she's older. I won't poison her against him, but I won't lie to protect his image either." As the months passed, life found a new rhythm. Adana enrolled in courses to update her banking skills, planning to return to work once Chinedu was older. She joined a support group for women who'd experienced domestic betrayal and eventually started co-leading meetings, using her experience to help others navigate their own paths to healing. The money from the divorce settlement and her share of liquidated assets was managed carefully, enough to buy a modest home in Lekki, invest in Chinedu's education, and donate to organizations fighting corruption and supporting abuse survivors. She dated occasionally but wasn't in a rush. The trauma of Chaik's betrayal had left scars that needed time to heal. Trust would come slowly, if at all. But she was learning to be content in her own company, to define herself beyond relationships with men, to build a life centered on purpose rather than partnership. One afternoon, 6 months after the trial, Adana received a letter from Kirikiri prison. Chaik's handwriting, requesting she visit. She almost threw it away. But something made her bring it to her therapist first. "What do you want to get from seeing him?" Dr. Olayinka asked. "I don't know. Closure, answers. Maybe I just want to see if he's learned anything. If there's any genuine remorse. And if there isn't, then at least I'll know I tried. That I didn't let hatred consume me the way his actions consumed him." The visit to Kirikiri was surreal. The man sitting across from her in the visiting area bore little resemblance to the confident businessman she'd married. Prison had stripped away the polish, revealing someone smaller, older, more human. "Thank you for coming," Chaik said quietly. "I wasn't sure you would. I wasn't sure I would either. Why did you want to see me?" "To apologize. Really apologize, not the performative sorry I said during the trial. Ada, I destroyed you. I destroyed us. I destroyed so many lives because I was too arrogant to think consequences applied to me. I told myself I deserved everything I took. The women, the money, the power. I told myself you'd never find out, and even if you did, you'd forgive me because that's what wives do. I was wrong about all of it. You were. Adana's voice was steady. You want absolution from me, Chaik? I can't give you that. What you did can't be undone with apologies. Those years I'll never get back. The innocence Chinidu lost by not having a present father. The lives you ruined through your schemes. Sorry doesn't fix any of that. I know. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm trying to understand how I became this person. How the boy from Enugu who wanted to make his mother proud turned into someone who hurt everyone who trusted him. Prison gives you a lot of time to think. To face yourself without distractions or excuses. They talked for an hour, not as husband and wife, but as two people trying to make sense of wreckage. Chaik asked about Chinidu, and Adana showed him photos. He cried, which surprised her. The man who'd seemed incapable of genuine emotion was weeping over pictures of his son learning to crawl. Will you let me be part of his life? Chaik asked. When I get out, when he's old enough to understand, will you tell him about me? Not just the crimes, but, I don't know, that I was human. Flawed, but human. I'll tell him the truth. All of it. The good you did and the harm you caused. I'll let him decide what relationship, if any, he wants with you. But Chaik, understand, I'm not doing that for you. I'm doing it for Chinidu, so he has the complete picture of where he comes from. As she left the prison, Adana felt something shift inside her. Not forgiveness, exactly. Not reconciliation. But a release of the anger that had been driving her. She'd needed Chaik to face consequences, and he had. She'd needed him to acknowledge harm, and he had. She'd needed to know her fight mattered, and it did. Now she could finally focus on building rather than battling. What do you think? Could you forgive someone who hurt you this deeply? Share your thoughts and don't forget to subscribe for the final chapter. 2 years after the trial, Adana stood in the community center she'd helped establish in Surulere, the Survivors' Voice Foundation. The space served as a resource center for women escaping abusive relationships, offering legal aid, counseling, job training, and temporary housing. It had started with the remainder of her settlement money and donations from people moved by her story, and had grown into something beyond her wildest imagination. Today was the grand opening of their expanded facility. The crowd included survivors who'd found help there, volunteers, donors, and media covering the event. But most importantly, it included the women who'd stood with her from the beginning. Amara, Mercy, Kemi, Oluchi. When I first left my marriage, I thought I was fighting one battle, Adana addressed the crowd. Trying to escape one bad situation, seeking justice in one case. I didn't realize I was part of a larger movement. Women across this country, across this continent, across the world who were tired of suffering domestic betrayal, infidelity, and abuse in silence. The response to my story showed me I wasn't alone. That we're never alone when we have the courage to speak truth. She looked at Chinidu, now 2.5, playing with Chidinma and Ngozi's daughter in the children's area. 3 children connected by a man who tried to deny them all, now growing up together in truth rather than lies. This center exists because of every woman who shared her story after I shared mine. Because of men who decided to examine their own behavior and do better. Because of young people who demanded healthier models of relationships. Because of families like mine who chose growth over protecting dysfunction. We're not perfect, healing isn't linear, and justice isn't always complete. But we're here. We're speaking. We're fighting. And we're winning. The applause was thunderous. After the formal program ended, people approached her with their own stories, their gratitude, their questions. An elderly woman pulled her aside. My daughter is in a marriage like yours was. She won't leave because she's afraid of what people will say. Can I bring her here? Yes. Tell her she's not alone. Tell her there's life after leaving. Tell her it's hard, but it's worth it. A young man approached nervously. Mrs. Adeyemi, I saw your trial and it made me realize I've been emotionally manipulating my girlfriend. I'm in therapy now, trying to change. I just wanted to say thank you for making me look at myself honestly. These conversations happen daily now. People whose lives had been touched, changed, challenged by her decision to fight back. The ripple effects continued spreading in ways she was still discovering. Later that evening, as Adana put Chinedu to bed in their modest but comfortable home, her son asked a question he'd started asking recently. Mama, where's Daddy? They'd agreed, Adana, her therapist, Uncle Emeka, that age-appropriate honesty was best. Daddy made some mistakes and he's learning to do better. You'll meet him when you're older, and you can decide what relationship you want with him. Is Daddy bad? Daddy did bad things. That's different from being bad. People are complicated, my love. We all make choices, some good, some bad. The important thing is learning from mistakes and trying to do better. Chinedu seemed satisfied with this answer, snuggling into his pillow. As Adana watched him drift to sleep, she thought about the future she was building for him. Not perfect, not without challenges, but honest. Built on truth rather than comfortable lies. Her phone buzzed. A message from Commissioner Okafor wanted you to know 3 more corruption cases have been opened based on leads from Chaik's trial. You started something bigger than one conviction. The system is changing, slowly but surely. Thank you for not staying silent. Another message, this one from Mrs. Okonkwo. Ada, I'm at the prison visiting my son. He's doing better, taking courses, working in the library, genuinely trying to change. He asked me to tell you he's grateful you didn't let him get away with it. Said his arrest might have saved his life. I don't know if I fully understand, but I'm trying. Thank you for not giving up on the possibility that people can change. Adana smiled softly. She'd never expected to feel compassion for Chaik, but hearing he was genuinely trying to become better stirred something in her. Not forgiveness, that might never fully come, but hope that cycles could be broken, that accountability could lead to growth. A knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. Her father, dropping by with groceries as he did weekly despite her protests that she could afford her own. Papa, you don't have to keep doing this. I know. But let me help while I can. You've given me something important, Ada. You've taught me how to be a better father. I failed you by teaching you to endure rather than demand respect. I won't make that mistake with your mother, your sisters, or the young women in our church who ask for advice. Papa, you didn't fail me. You did your best with what you knew. And you did better with what you learned. That's how progress works. Each generation building on the last, breaking cycles, creating new patterns. He kissed her forehead. I'm proud of you. Not just for the trial or the foundation, but for every day you choose courage over comfort. After he left, Adana sat in the quiet of her living room, surrounded by evidence of the life she'd built. Photos of Chinedu's milestones. Certificates from her professional courses. Thank you cards from women who'd found help through the foundation. Articles about reforms inspired by her case. A framed quote she'd chosen, truth doesn't always set you free immediately, but eventually it's the only thing that does. Her journey from that devastating night when she'd caught Chaik with Ngozi to this moment had been brutal, terrifying, and transformative. She'd lost her marriage, her naivety, her sense of security. But she'd gained her voice, her power, her purpose. The phone rang one more time. A producer from an international media company wanting to make a documentary about her story. She'd received several such offers over the past year and had turned them all down, needing privacy to heal. But maybe now, with some distance and perspective, it was time to share more broadly. Let me think about it, she told the producer. But if I do agree, I want it to be comprehensive. Not just my story, but Amara's, Mercy's, Kemi's, all the women who stood up. And I wanted to include the aftermath. What happens after the trial, how survivors rebuild, how systems can change. People need to see the full picture. Absolutely. We want to show that justice is possible, but also that it's complex. After hanging up, Adana walked to Chinedu's room, watching him sleep peacefully. Tomorrow she had a meeting with legal advocates drafting stronger workplace harassment laws. Next week, a speaking engagement at the University of Lagos about domestic violence. The month after, a collaboration with a shelter in Abuja to replicate the survivor's voice model in other cities. The work was endless because the need was endless. But for the first time since her marriage collapsed, Adana felt not just surviving but thriving. Not just healing but growing. Not just enduring but leading. Her story had started with humiliation, being called a beast by her husband at a party just weeks after giving birth, discovering his betrayal with her own sister, facing public disgrace as her marriage dissolved in scandal. It had been designed to break her, to make her small, to force her into silence and submission. Instead, it had forged her into something stronger. Not harder, she'd worked to keep her heart open, to not let bitterness consume her. But stronger in her convictions, clearer in her boundaries, bolder in her voice. Chike had humiliated her, expecting her to crumble. Instead, she'd made him regret underestimating her. Not through revenge, though accountability felt like justice, but through transformation. By turning her pain into purpose, her trauma into truth-telling, her devastation into determination. She thought about all the women still trapped in marriages like hers had been. Still enduring emotional manipulation, infidelity, abuse. Still choosing silence because speaking seemed too costly. Still believing the lie that leaving was shameful while staying was noble. To them, she wanted to say, your voice matters. Your truth matters. Speaking up is terrifying, and there will be costs. But silence has costs too. Your dignity, your sanity, your soul. You deserve better than crumbs of affection from someone who promised you a feast. You deserve better than conditional love that requires you to shrink, submit, and suffer. Your children deserve to see you fight for yourself, because that teaches them to fight for themselves. Your daughters deserve to know women don't have to endure. Your sons deserve to know men must be accountable. As dawn broke over Lagos, Adana made tea and stood on her small balcony watching the city wake. Somewhere in Kirikiri, Chike was beginning another day of his 15-year sentence. Somewhere in the city, women were making the choice to stay or leave their own difficult relationships. Somewhere, a girl was learning what love should and shouldn't look like. Adana's phone buzzed with the morning news alerts. Another corruption case opened. Another harassment complaint taken seriously. Another woman speaking up. The ripples continued spreading. She picked up Chinedu, who'd woken early and toddled out to find her. Good morning, my love. Want to help Mama make breakfast? As they worked together in the kitchen, him making more mess than help, but learning, Adana realized this was victory. Not the trial verdict or the media coverage or the foundation's success, though those mattered. But this, raising her son in truth, building a life of purpose, standing in her power, knowing she'd fought for something bigger than herself. She'd been humiliated. She'd been called a beast. She'd been threatened, gaslight, attacked. But she'd survived. She'd spoken. She'd fought. And in doing so, she'd helped create a world where the next woman wouldn't have to fight so hard. Where domestic betrayal and infidelity would be recognized as abuse, not acceptable male behavior. Where speaking up would be seen as courage, not vindictiveness. Where women's voices would matter as much as men's reputations. This was her revenge, not destruction, but creation. Building something better from the ashes of what was destroyed. As Chinedu laughed at the funny shapes she was making with his pancakes, Adana smiled. The journey wasn't over. Healing was ongoing. Justice was imperfect. But standing here in her kitchen with her son, living authentically and purposefully, she knew one thing with certainty. She regretted nothing. Thank you for following Adana's journey from betrayal to triumph. If this story touched you, please subscribe to Echoes of Africa for more powerful African stories. Share this with someone who needs to hear that it's possible to survive betrayal and come out stronger. Comment below. What was the most powerful moment in Adana's story for you? And remember, if you're experiencing domestic abuse, you're not alone. Resources are available. Your voice matters. Your truth matters. You deserve better. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss our stories of resilience, courage, and transformation. From all of us at Echoes of Africa, thank you for watching, and remember, speaking your truth might cost you, but silence costs more.